Hi everyone, my name's John. Welcome back to my channel. Every once in a while I read a book and it will be 1 or 2 or 3 years or longer before I actually write a review. Or in this case, write a review and then actually get to post it on this channel. So this has been written for a while, but sometimes they just slip through my fingers for a while. But I wanted to talk about this because it's from one of my favorite university presses, and it's on a topic that I've always found of perennial interest for whatever reason. Well, it's probably because I'm interested in both the areas where this book sort of overlaps. It's philosophy of science, and I love science and have always loved philosophy too. So this is Revolutionizing the Sciences, European Knowledge in Transition, 1500 to 1700. And this is the third edition, and it is by Peter Deere, put out by Princeton University Press. And this isn't exactly like some of the books that I review on this channel. This is probably more, I don't know if I say this in the body of the review, it's more like a textbook. But we'll get into the content of the book itself. Certain kinds of books are hard to review because they don't really lend themselves to being read cover to cover in a sort of systematic, one-go, one-off kind of way. And this is one of those books. This is, like I said, the third and latest, as far as I know, edition of Peter Deere's Revolutionizing the Sciences, European Knowledge and in Transition from 1500 to 1700, which I think was published elsewhere, maybe in Europe, parts of Europe, as European Knowledge and Its Ambitions. So if you see that title, I think it's the same book. Princeton University put it out in 2019. And because it's moderately technical in its approach and covers a pretty short period of time, relatively speaking, this is probably ideal for undergraduates, maybe, or academics who are teaching an undergraduate course in the history of science or the history of, or the philosophy of science, maybe, during the scientific revolution specifically. Just don't expect any popularizing, rip-roaring, narrative-driven history of science, because this ain't it. If you know that it's not really aimed at casual readers and that it can often be kind of dry in its details, then Deere's book is a pretty solid introduction to the material. It's a survey, a very short one, about 170 pages or so, of the major intellectual changes that occurred in the European natural sciences from the very tail end of the Middle Ages, when Aristotelianism sort of ruled the roost and reigned supreme throughout much of the Enlightenment, with the advent of things like the scientific method, empiricism, and Newtonianism and Cartesianism. By 1500, scientific knowledge had been handed down to students in the form of mostly authoritative texts. Think Aristotle, Galen, Ptolemy, etc., for centuries. It wasn't until the Renaissance that these sources themselves began to be questioned to see if their claims were accurate assessments of the natural world. The Renaissance loosened the hold on Aristotelian scholasticism of the natural sciences, and in doing so, it slowly replaced the abstract theorizing of Aristotle with first-hand observation and empiricism that would define the sciences for the next several centuries. In fact, if there's one major weakness of the book, it's that the analysis remains strictly on the educational, the rhetorical, and the philosophical contexts of knowledge creation, and doesn't really go into sociological analysis. But strictly speaking, as a history of science or philosophy of science book, it's great. Knowledge itself not only underwent a sea change in the two centuries that are being discussed, but it also experienced institutionalization in in each of the sciences. In fact, not only institutionalization, differentiation. In the year 1500, you really have natural philosophy, and by the year 1700, you have physics, you have chemistry, you have astronomy. It had branched off and become much more specific. So not only did you have things like Royal Institutes of Science, which is where the socialization and institutionalization comes in, but what's going on within science itself, not only its methods, but how it is thinking about itself as an area or a domain of knowledge, is also rapidly changing. And that is talked about much less. Scientific organizations, like I said, like the Royal Society in England, like the Academy of Sciences in Paris, or in France, provided funding, provided the tools and the opportunities for the questioning of received knowledge, setting scientific standards, conducting experiments, all of that good stuff. Overall, it's a really good survey. I only have a few quibbles with, ones that I've tried to talk about above. But if you supplement it with other kinds of writing about the philosophy of science during this period, ones that pay more attention to sociological conditions and institutions, and also the lives and the contributions of individual scientists that have more background information on, say, Regiomontanus or something, this would make a really good piece of the puzzle if you're looking for an introduction to the material here. So, from Princeton, Revolutionizing the Sciences, European Knowledge in Transition, 1500 to 1700 by Peter Deere. I'll see you next time with another book review. Bye.